Welcome to another episode of Coconut Chats, everyone. I'm Harita, and I'm joined with my friends Soumita and Sonja today. Hi, ladies.
Kia ora.
Hello.
So today's episode is a few weeks late, but it's in light of the 19th anniversary of 9/11, the game changer. So first things first, where were we all on the day that this happened? Sonja, we'll start with you.
I was 11 years old and I had just started secondary school, or I guess the equivalent of high school for a lot of people. And I was in my English class. And so I just remembered one of the other English teachers running into the room saying what had happened, and my English teacher sort of dismissing it, like we couldn't really believe it, and then getting on with the lesson. And then what was really strange was that we were allowed to go home early that day, and it wasn't until I got home and saw it on the TV that I knew something had happened. So it was very, very strange because it was this kind of like, oh, he's playing a prank or something, stupid prank. And it was just really, really strange. But when I got home, I remember watching the TV religiously for the next 3 evenings. Because you've got to remember, social media wasn't a thing back then. A lot of people listened to the radio and watched TV for their information, and you could just see all these images. And I know, like, we live in an era of like shock and all of those things, but back then it really had quite an impact. And I think being 11, it had quite left really horrible perception and impression on me because I had been at the Two Towers only a year earlier. So yeah, it was sort of a surreal, it's a prank, a really ill thought out prank to actually, oh my God, this is somewhere where I've been and this is going to change everything. I remember that much. What about yourselves?
Yeah, for me, so it was 2001, so I was in high school as well, most probably sixth standard, I think. And it was a Tuesday, so most likely it would have been like any other normal weekday evening for us in India. Me studying, mom busy with household stuffs, and my father most probably hanging out with his friends in the local club. That was our usual evening routine for years. The blur memory of the day I have is of my father rushing in. He was at the top of his voice asking us to switch on the TV. And once we did that, we saw something unimaginable. I guess, like everyone else, we also thought it is an accident because who does this kind of thing? There is no world war going on at the moment that I know of, and America is the big daddy of the world, so who will dare to mess with them? And right when the world was thinking that, boom, another crash confirming it is an attack and not an accident. One thing I realized at that very moment that whoever did this must have hated the United States more than eternity. That's what it takes to do something like this. And the date they chose is so appropriate. Each and every American will remember this massacre every time they press 911 to call for help. I believe that was the idea behind choosing that date. Yeah. What about you, Harita?
I actually never thought about the 911 part being the date. Like, it's so obvious after you say it. Um, for me, it was a little bit surreal. I was 13 back when this happened. So I was in my first year of high school, but I wasn't actually in high school when this happened. My family and I were actually at the beginning of a 6-month around the world holiday, which to most people is like a dream come true. Um, but I guess our timing couldn't have been any more wrong. So USA was the first country that we went to on this holiday. We were in USA for almost 3 months, and New York was like the last leg before going to Canada. So we were actually at the top of the Twin Towers 10 days before 9/11. Even to this day, we've got so many photos of our family at the top of the terrace. So because obviously Twin Towers, there was one building that tourists could go up to on a guided tour. You could see the stock exchange floors and go up to the terrace and see the foyer and everything. And the second building was purely an office building, so the public wasn't allowed in there. So we've got photos, souvenirs, everything. The day that 9/11 actually happened, we were in Ottawa at my mum's cousin's house. So basically, after New York, we went to Canada. And it happened around 8:45 a.m. US and Ottawa time, because I remember we were eating breakfast at my mum's cousin's house, and the news was just on like normal, and it was on TV, and we thought, oh, what's this movie being made? We were just there, so we were taking this interest in it because we thought it was really cool, like a movie being made of a place that we've just been to. And then we realized, oh, this is actually true, and it's actually happening right now. It was like a live camera. And then, 15 minutes later, also that second plane went through the second building, and just like every channel we flicked through, it was the same thing on every single TV channel. And we were just like in shock because we were literally there the week before. And at the time, my brother was 8, and I think he also realized, I don't know how his brain processed it, but he just started crying. We were like watching TV, and we were all like stunned, and my brother was just bawling his eyes out, like, what's happening, Mum, what's happening? Like, he just kept on saying that, because as an 8-year-old, you probably don't really understand what's happening, except that it's something bad. So yeah, that was that day for us. So then, as a flow-on of what happened, how did it impact our lives after that day? Sonja?
I think, there was always a lot of racial tension in the UK, but I think this certainly made it a lot worse. And I knew growing up I was different. Like, I went to predominantly white school from the age of 7. I lived in a very white neighborhood, and the school that I had just started when this happened was a British boarding school in the country. I mean, I was a day pupil, so I didn't board, but you had a lot of you have a lot of wealthy and well-to-do people, and it was, I don't know, the color of my skin suddenly became very, very important from that moment. I remember I went on school trips, and whenever we got to the border, I would be the person pulled aside. And I have a very vivid memory of going on a school trip when I was 14. And, I wasn't the most popular kid. I was a bit awkward. I had no real social skills anyway. And to be taken aside like that, and having to have your teacher deal with border officials, and you don't know what's going on, and you're kind of scared because you're separated from everyone else. It just was, yeah, you felt like you were branded, and there was nothing I could do. Like, I can't change the color of my skin. And like, thankfully, because I was with privileged white people, nothing too horrific happened to me. But I remember the kids treating me weird after each of these little incidences. And it was also when there would be like riots and stuff in the UK, because you did have a lot of, white nationalist groups becoming very popular after this. And I'm Punjabi, Sikh. I'm not a Muslim. I'm not from Pakistan. I'm not from India. Or, but you're all treated like a homogenous blob. So, I mean, as terrified as I was, I can't imagine the terror that people that were Muslim and people that were from Pakistan and Afghanistan, Iraq and Iran must have felt, because I imagine I already experienced a fraction of what they did, and what I felt and went through was hard enough in itself. And I think this sort of speaks to why I did everything I could to distance myself from my Indian and my Sikh identity. And, you know, I'm not as light skinned now as I was growing up, because having come to New Zealand, I do actually look a bit more Indian now. All the UVs, so make sure you wear sunblock. Did not learn that lesson. But if people asked me if I was some other ethnicity, I would jump on it. Particularly if it was a European one. And I would do my best to blend in with everyone else, which is ridiculous when you're like one of the early brown kids, right? But yeah, I think it really cemented wanting to distance myself away from anything that appeared foreign or different. And it just wasn't nice to grow up in that environment of fear. And there was a few other incidences as well. I remember being followed by adult men, white men in a car around the school grounds when I was 15. They're throwing things at me, calling me a pappy and telling me to go back to my own country. And when you're 15 years old and you're just trying to get to, you know, from one building to another, because our school campus was very big. It's a bit like a university campus in that there's buildings everywhere. It was, you know, people didn't really come to your defense or rescue, because, you know, they probably thought the same deep down, and that's quite scarring as a child. And I think I buried a lot of that feeling down, and I think I was saying to you earlier this year that I felt like this was my year of rage, where a lot of those repressed things are coming out now. But yeah, the impact on me was distancing myself from my identity and just building a shell that I feel is coming apart now in a form of rage. Especially with everything else going on today. How about yourselves?
Yeah, sad to know that, Sonia, actually. Yeah, in my case, luckily I didn't have to go through that because I grew up in India and everyone there looked like me, like they had the same skin color, so I didn't face such problems. And the impact was a bit different in my case. When I saw the video of first time, like people were running away from the site, from the towers, the first reaction I had was, okay, these people are quite close to the towers, so why isn't the building falling on them? That was kind of my first reaction. And I wasn't on social media, and my source of info was national news and newspapers. So soon I learned that being the then tallest building in the world, the architecture was done in a way that the building will go down vertically in case of any disaster. And that's what happened. Like once it caught fire, the heat melted the steel beams supporting it, and the building collapsed vertically. And this may not sound a big deal today. Maybe we will, if we hear it now, then we will think that, okay, this is something understood. But to a 12-year-old me then, this was a big information. I was kind of fascinated that the architecture was done keeping in mind what happens at times of disaster, because till that time I have only known of incidents where tall buildings collapsed on the adjacent houses, destroying the entire city. So this was something new to me. And before that incident, I had never heard of Taliban or Al Qaeda or Osama bin Laden. So when I saw Laden speak in newspaper, I said to myself, "This guy's eyes don't look cruel." How stupid I must have been that till that time I was under the impression only people who look cruel do cruel things. So a few more details as they came out, and we learned that the people who actually carried out the operation were disguised as regular people and having regular lifestyle. So all these things came with a big learning. I would say 9/11 was the incident which introduced me and many like me to terrorism. I remember I was about to travel to New Jersey for the first time in 2009. That was 9 years after 9/11. And I was talking to my aunt about the travel, and the first reaction she had, watch out, don't get killed by terrorists. And that was the impact 9/11 had on common Indians, I think. There's a high chance of getting killed if you go to America. And in 2009, when I was there, I was part of a team of 11 people. We went for a summer exchange program, and I will tell you an incident that happened to us when on our way back. We were at the Newark International Airport on our way back to Kolkata. All of us were wearing the same New Jersey University T-shirt that was gifted to us as a farewell token, and the T-shirt came in two colors, blue and red. Coincidentally, most of us liked the blue one, and only one girl was wearing the red T-shirt. During the security checkout, when half of the team was already through and the other half still waiting in line, suddenly one of the officer thought all of us were wearing blue and only she is wearing red. So maybe that is kind of signal. Maybe she's the one carrying the bomb. So we were all detained for like couple of hours, and each of our bag were thoroughly checked, especially that girl's. Her bag was unpacked piece by piece, and then we were individually asked random questions. It took a while before we managed to convince the officers with our answers, and they let us go. At that time, it was kind of a mixed reaction in the group. So some of us were like, why are they doubting us? Because just because of our skin color, do we look like criminals? And if our bags were unpacked, why isn't someone standing there to put things back in our bag as an apology? So young minds, it is common to have reactions like that, but now it makes sense to me. Who will take a chance after what happened in 9/11? If I were in their place, and maybe I would have done the same. I would have been perhaps more critical than what they did. And who knows? Until you are in the situation, we never know how to react. And every human being has the right to do whatever it takes to protect their country. Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, a lot of good points there. Oh, your story about the lady wearing the red T-shirt, like later how it's affected people. With me, given that I was in Canada with my family on a holiday when this happened, well, Canada pretty much went into lockdown for about a week, obviously different to our COVID lockdowns, but like a stay at home if you can. I'm pretty sure they closed the border between New York and Canada for about a week because they weren't sure if the terrorists were going to try and make an attack somewhere else. And Canada is basically the closest place to New York, so Canada was on a really high watch. And everyone was pretty much just told, please stay at home until given the all clear, only leave if you have to. Airports were closed for about a week, I think. It was just, it was surreal. About 2 weeks after 9/11, we were flying from Canada to London, basically the next country in our 6-month around the world holiday. My auntie lives in London as well, so we had a base to go to. But I can't even explain how much airport security there was in Toronto. We had to get to the airport about 6 hours before our flight, just because of the amount of checking we were told that there would be. Every single suitcase was checked before you could check it in. So they were opening every suitcase and going through it the way they go through your hand luggage. If it comes up in the scanner, they were going through every single suitcase that you were checking into the plane like that, because obviously if you've got a bomb in there, so that was being checked. Every single person was being patted down. You couldn't object to it. If you objected to it, you weren't allowed to get on the flight. So they were splitting men and women into different lines, so that women would be patted down by women and men would be patted down by men. So again, I was 13 when this happened, so I kind of understood, but my brother was only 8, and I never ever get his face out of my mind. He was so scared because he just didn't know what was going on. We had to remove our shoes when we went through that scanner that you walk through because, you know, you can put stuff in your shoes. Every single point, just checking everywhere. When we were in London, London itself was fine, but then we went on a 3-week Europe tour. It was a bus tour. And one day we were in Paris and we were at a train station near the Eiffel Tower, and it was an underground train station. Can't remember the name of the train station now, but it was one of the main ones in Paris. And there was an unattended bag left on one of the platforms. We were waiting on another platform though, so we didn't even know about this bag, but all of a sudden, all these security guards and police are running throughout the train station, telling everyone to leave, and you know, we don't really understand French, so we didn't really know what they were saying, but everyone was just running to get out of the station. And because it's an underground station, you have to actually walk quite a bit before you actually get up to the street level. So we just started running with everyone else. We didn't even know why we were running. And then we got up to the main street and we asked some people what happened. Why was the train station evacuated? And another thing in Paris is that a lot of people there prefer not to speak in English. So we ended up asking about 5 different people before someone actually gave us an answer. And they said, oh, unattended bag, bomb. And we thought, oh, what? And this just goes to show, you know, it was about 6 weeks after 9/11, but the whole world was just walking on eggshells. So any unattended bag, any odd behavior by anyone, it was just, this is how people reacted. And again, my family being Indian and being reasonably light-skinned, we don't fully look Indian. I think our skin color is kind of that Middle Eastern skin color. So anything that we did in an airport or any streets was just, people just looked at us oddly, like, oh, you know, just assuming maybe they're Muslim or something. Another like quick story I've got is when we were at the airport in Toronto. So this was when we were waiting for our flight to London. Some person just yelled at my family saying, oh, you Muslims are ruining our world. Get the fuck out of here. My parents just stayed quiet because, you know, it's no point talking back to someone like this. But I was just like, oh, hey, mate, we're Hindu and we're from New Zealand. We haven't done anything to your world. And then he literally spat in front of my face and walked off. And, you know, it's just like, until this point, I had never come across racism or anything. Like, luckily enough, I've grown up in a country where no one cares if you're Indian or Muslim or whatever. Most people in New Zealand are treated equally. And the first time in my life I'd ever faced racism was like this incident at the airport in Toronto. And it was because they thought we were Muslim. And I was like, you know, like, just because we're brown, you also need to know not every Muslim is bad like this, but it just showed how ignorant people were. And then there's also been all those conspiracy theories, all the movies about why 9/11 happened, why the building collapsed the way it collapsed. There was this conspiracy theory about the fact that the landlord was going bankrupt and he had to somehow claim insurance on his building, and this was the only option he had. Apparently it was even a planned terrorist attack, like there were construction workers in the basement helping to loosen the structure of a building. Like, all these conspiracy theories just kind of show how it's impacted the world, because no one knows what to believe or why it happened. And, you know, obviously those conspiracy theories impact us as well, because we watch something on TV and we think, oh, maybe that's the truth. Oh, no, maybe this other thing is the truth. Or maybe something we saw on social media is the truth, and everyone just kind of gets confused by it. So I guess a lead on is how it impacted us, is how do we think it impacted the rest of the world?
I guess I think for impact on the rest of the world, I think we've always been like, it's either this or this. And I think I really understood that from my time living in the States in 2009 to 2010, is that you're either A or you're B. You know, you're either Democratic or Republican. You're either this team or that team, this or that. There's no in between. Whereas I think maybe perhaps prior to 9/11, while we still had that this and that in the world, we were a lot more willing to come together in the middle and talk. I don't think the world works that way anymore. I think we're more polarized. I think that we generalize a lot of people now, and I think that we're worse. I think we're more, I don't necessarily think we're more racist, but I think we're more comfortable being open with that racism. I think we're more comfortable being horrible to each other. And I think that this is what we're seeing today with Trump and a lot of far-right governments. I think a lot of it stems from 9/11, and I think 9/11 stemmed from a lot of things before it as well. But the way I see it is we're coming further and further and further apart, and there's no middle ground anymore. And I also think that, the people that are suffering the most are people of color, LGBTQ, other minorities, disabled, like as the world gets more and more polarized. But I also think there's a lot of hope there, because I think that, and I'm just going to talk about Muslims in this sense, I think they've been treated as very othered, even in comparison to some of the other minorities. And even though we're continuing to polarize, I'm seeing a lot of people that make up different minority groups are starting to work together now. I think that's something you didn't really have before, because it was always in the interest of white supremacists to keep us divided. And I think that this has been the beauty of like social media and stuff. We're starting to see that now and understand we actually have a lot more in common, and we're coming together to work together. We just don't have the power, as it were. And that's why we're not gaining traction. So it's kind of strange. I'm seeing more polarization, but within our sphere, more connections. And I would say, like, now my friendship groups and my connections and my networks are more diverse. And not just like my networks, but like my parents and my grandparents' networks are a lot more diverse, because we know that a lot of us are othered, and a lot of us have been deliberately kept apart from one another because it serves the interests of white supremacists. So I have hope in that, but I just wish we understood being more of a collective, because we could change the world, but we're just not getting there to that collectiveness fast enough. But yeah, I think the world has become worse in a lot of ways, but I think I have hope that people I would have viewed as very different to me, because there was that divide and division, especially in the UK and the US, and I've lived in both countries. But now with the benefit of hindsight and all of those things, I can see that we were deliberately sort of kept apart from one another. And I think we can create something. We just have to learn to work together, because we've not really done that successfully before. What about yourselves?
Yeah, so I will try to highlight a few other things. Yeah, I totally agree with you, Sonia. You have covered that beautifully. Yeah, yeah, America has never been same after 9/11. So, and as Harita mentioned before, so many theories came up to explain what led to 9/11. And one of the theories I have read, that says that one of the superpowers of the world who funded and raised Taliban in Afghanistan to fight against another superpower, and when the mission was accomplished, the superpower stopped funding, and 9/11 was kind of a taste of their own medicine. Some said it was a reply to everyone who belittled and oppressed Islam. Not sure which is the reason behind that incident, but whatever it is, if a revenge involves killing innocent lives, then that act cannot be justified by any means, in my opinion. I haven't met God. Many religious leaders claim to have done that, so their views may differ, but that this is what I think. God has created each of us, and if we can't find God in each other's heart, then we cannot find him at all, I guess. No point in killing in his name. And since 9/11, Middle East has always been at war. The initial quest was, of course, to dismantle Al-Qaeda, which is understood, rather asked for. It took 10 years for USA to pin down the person who claimed to be the mastermind behind the attack. 10 years, and every nook and corner of Afghanistan was turned upside down during this time. So many innocent lives lost. The military involvement in Afghanistan, which continues even today, is perhaps the longest running war in US history. And then comes the Iraq invasion in 2003. And when US troops officially left Iraq in December 2011, the country was left in far more volatile state than when the quest initially began in 2003. And this is kind of making it easy for terrorist organizations to brainwash people and make them believe in their cause. Because if a child sees his house blown apart, his parents killed, and the first thing he will think of is revenge. Only if he gets into good hands and learns the meaning of right and wrong, maybe he will move away from violence. But that is something that rarely happens. Vultures are roaming around, and it's hard to escape their sharp eyes. And I have never been to any of the Middle Eastern countries, so I don't know the actual picture there. But during my stay in USA, what I felt was common people are kind of tired of being at war forever. So many Americans' lives lost. There are so many movies, web series based on the post-traumatic stress disorder of soldiers coming back from war. So I think it's violence is not letting us anywhere. So I would like to quote Mahatma Gandhi and conclude my part that an eye for an eye will make the world blind. We are all blinded by pain and violence. Someone has to stop. Maybe the better person, be the better person and walk out peacefully because nobody is winning here.
I really like that quote. It's so true for everything that's going on in today's world as well. My point on this is probably just a carry on of what the two of you have said. Muslims all over the world were hated and told to die after 9/11. And how can you just assume that a whole religion was responsible for this? A few people were responsible, but there are so many Muslim people out there that are the nicest people you will ever meet in your life. You can't go and tell them to die when they haven't done anything wrong. Then there's been similar attacks in the rest of the world after this. There was the Christchurch attack at the mosque beginning of 2019. That wasn't done by a Muslim, but it was done by somebody that hates Muslims. But he was just deemed mentally unstable. So the way he was treated compared to how the terrorists that did 9/11 were treated is quite different. If you read into how he was basically treated as a mental person rather than a terrorist. It was called a terrorist attack, but the way he was treated afterwards was very different. Then there was the 26th of November Mumbai attacks a few years ago. The Colombo bombing in 2019. Then there were so many other attacks around the world. Like there was that Ariana Grande attack, basically while she was having a concert. The attack happened at her concert in Manchester. I feel like 9/11 was just like the start of an era of bomb attacks and terrorist attacks, and it's such a sad era to be living through where people are trying to do the best they can in life, trying to live their life to the fullest, but at the back of your mind you've always got this worry, like what if another terrorist attack happens, and what if it happens where I am? And that really just shows how it's impacted everyone in the world. Like everyone just has this at the back of their mind now and you can never ignore it. So on that note, I hope you've all enjoyed listening to today's session. It wasn't the happiest of sessions, but we felt like it was something that had to be covered given that the 19th anniversary was just a few weeks ago. So if you've got any feedback on our episode, feel free to comment on our Facebook or YouTube page. You can always email us at coconutchats@gmail.com. You can send us feedback on this episode, or you can even give us ideas for future episodes. Anything that we get from our listeners will be heard, and we'd love to have your interaction. So until next time, bye.
Bye bye.
Bye.